G'day, g'day. How you going? What do you know? Don't strike a light. G'day, g'day. And how you going? Just say g'day, 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 and you'll be right.
Now we come to the portion of the service before we do our Bible study that we address some end times news and trends that are happening around the world as it relates to Bible prophecy. And as you know, there's so many headlines and so many news components. Time doesn't permit to get into all of it, but here's a couple interesting things that has popped up this last several days. Some of you have probably been hearing what's going on in Aleppo and Syria, and that's definitely created a lot of tension throughout the Middle East, and also especially for Israel. Israel has this cautious eye on Iran after Syrian rebels lose Aleppo. So the fall of Aleppo to Syrian government forces backed by Russia and Iran has heightened alarm in Israel about the potential threats on its borders and a wider reshaping of the region. And again, this is an absolute travesty what's happening in that town and also what's going on in Damascus. And as we're starting to see the collapse of what's happening in Damascus, which was going to be and will be a fulfillment of Bible prophecy out of Isaiah chapter 17, specifically talks about the destruction of Damascus. But as Aleppo is starting to fall, more and more disasters happening in Damascus. And again, this civil war has been going on in Syria for quite some time, and that has enabled Iran supreme leader Khamenei has called for an end of the Jewish state and readily increases its influence across the region. And we're going to touch on that in just a second. But whether it's the revolutionary guard forces or the Shiite Muslim proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon and their military, that Tehran's reach extends from Afghanistan even all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. So they're really expanding its damage and its potential threat, as well as the concerns of the increased flow of arms that Iran has been providing to Hezbollah, Hamas, and other areas in that region. We do see that it definitely puts Israel in a more heightened state as more of these things are developing. There's been isolated border incidents in recent months. Again, there was a major war that broke out, as you know, in 2006. And why Hezbollah ranks have suffered in the fighting in Syria. Israeli officials estimate about 1,700 Israeli fighters have been killed and about 7,000 wounded. And the group has then Hezbollah restocked. So now they have 100,000 different rockets and an arsenal ready to attack Israel. Also, speaking of Aleppo, they're trying to evacuate a lot of the region, a lot of the people out of the area, but there was an abrupt aborted within this operation. And the World Health Organization said that they assumed that the message to abort this and stop this operation came from the Russians who are monitoring the area. The World Health Organization team in eastern Aleppo had no contact with the Syrian authorities at the transit site. And about 7 a.m., about 194 evacuated patients had arrived to one of 8 different hospitals that is overwhelmed within the area in western Aleppo and also nearby Turkey. So there's at least 6,000 civilians and rebels that have left Aleppo since the Syrian government had retained most of the city on Thursday. And then the UN believes about 50,000 are still trapped there, among many are women and infants. And also the other reports that you see is the absolute horror that is happening with the children, how they're setting the children on fire, and how so many women are committing suicide to avoid being raped by the rebels and ISIS. But this is the Islamic terrorist ideology, whether it's ISIS or some of the rebels that are causing this disruption and disaster. Speaking ideology, again, as we mentioned a moment ago about Khamenei, who's the supreme leader of Iran, but he went on again this week to talk about how the Zionist regime will not exist in 25 years. So the Iran supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, said on Wednesday that Israel will be destroyed within 25 years through a united Palestinian struggle. speaking to during a meeting of the head of Islamic jihadist terrorist group, Ramadan Abdul, Khomeini praised the Palestinian motivations and adds that the only way to liberate the holy city, Jerusalem, is really is the struggle and resistance and other solutions as well, and that are also useless and futile. That it's this whole Palestinian resistance that they're trying to push here. The Zionist regime, as they have said, will cease to exist within 25 years. He also reaffirmed the support for the Palestinian nation, despite being enraged in the certain regional issues that the Islamic Republic has also announced explicitly. The Palestinian is the number one issue in the Muslim world that has fulfilled its obligations in this regard. So he's also called Israel a great cancer that needs to be eliminated and annihilated, and with the whole city and the whole of Tel Aviv and Haifa, but also the whole nation he wants to annihilate. Just last month, as we've also mentioned before, that the Syrian minister or military commander predicted the Palestinian Arabs would get rid of Israel within the next 10 years, as well as this past Sunday. Iran's defense minister warned that if U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's policy lead to war in the Middle East, it would result in destruction of Israel. So this is where they're going to take it out on. Also, speaking of these disastrous attacks, the United Nations, and there was a report that came out of the Washington Post that the threat of hacking a nuclear plant is growing. So the threats around the world. So the nightmare scenario is rising among attack on nuclear plants' computer system that caused the uncontrolled release of radiation, according to the UN deputy chief that warned on Thursday. The deputy secretary of the Security Council told them in a meeting that extremists on vicious non-state groups are actively seeking weapons of mass destruction, and these weapons are increasingly accessible. So again, the cyber attacks that are going to be happening, and now they're trying to attack some of the nuclear plants. And again, the consequences of these sort of attacks will be devastating, as we know. And so something that could happen, which would be a real game changer in the world. And then lastly, yesterday, as some of you probably read in the paper or were aware of, a major earthquake that happened off the coast of Papua New Guinea. This was the largest one this year so far, of a 7.9. And so far this year, there have been 16 major earthquakes that have happened, that is 7.0 to 7.9. And the other reports have talked about there's about 15,711 earthquakes that have happened this year so far, and that's going from 3.0 to 7.9. And you start to study, and I did a course in college on geology, and we studied earthquakes and stuff like this, but there's 6 main classifications or classes of earthquakes. You have the minor class, which is the 3.0s, the 3.9. Then you have a light, which is a 4.0, a moderate 5.0s, strong, which is the 6.0. Then you have a major earthquake, which is the 7.0 to 7.9, and then a great earthquake. And it's interesting, this word great is also used in when Jesus warns about the last days and the signs of the times. There's great earthquakes that are going to happen, the pestilences and all these sort of things. These are the beginning of sorrow. So before the tribulation begins, we're going to see more of these great earthquakes take place. So we're just in the cusp, in the beginning part of these great sorrows. It's going to get worse and worse. And so the increase of seismic activities is consistent with biblical prophecy. And we're starting to see all around the world these earthquakes in various places and the magnitude of these earthquakes. So this is one of those great signs of the times that we are aware of. And that's it for now on today's update.